In China, there is a zero COVID policy, which means no COVID can exist anywhere. If one single case is found, every person that has contacted that person, everyone, must be quarantined. Scores of officials go to the town, city, or megacity they live and conduct COVID tests on everyone. If more cases are found, the entire neighborhood, district, township, or even the whole city is put into lockdown. Nothing can get in, nothing can get out. A vast system of CCTV cameras monitors everyone in and out, using biometrics, face shapes, eyes, nose, and other metrics. They track who enters and who leaves. If anyone was there and left, then the same process happens to the community they left to. The year is 2022, and China, since the outbreak of COVID, has zero COVID as their policy. Back in the height of the pandemic, they welded people into their homes. Unable to escape, many starved, and many were left dead. This will not make the news, for China owns all news coming out of the country. COVID-19 has been used as a tool for the complete control of every citizen in China. This pandemic has become a nightmare for Chinese citizens. Grandparents are left alone in their homes. Their district is on lockdown. They have no food. No one may enter their home. Their grandchildren beg the security to let them through. They are pushed back, beaten. Their grandparents starve to death. And after weeks, their children and grandchildren find them. The government had cremated them, burned them. How many died like this? We will never know. This totalitarianism is not new and will not end anytime soon. This is only the tip of the iceberg. In July last year, floods in Hennans province flooded 1,024 townships. To put it into perspective, 13 million people were affected. Over 800,000 were evacuated. It was said that it was a once in 500-year rains. In reality, these floods were man-made. Currently, there are over 22,000 dams in China, and these dams are high-priority infrastructure to the government. When threatened by high waters, authorities often release the waters of the dam so as not to damage them. Those downstream are flooded out quite often. Entire towns are inundated. Farmers' crops are washed away with no compensation. Houses are destroyed. Lives are lost, and all this with no warning. At 1 a.m, a government official, local that is, receives the instruction to release the waters downstream. No warning is given to those poor souls downstream, and a torrent, terrifying in its destruction, roars downhill. Red and black sediment fill the waters like the red flag and black death that haunts this ancient land. Imagine this, deliberate, without warning.
Why no warning came, Hemmans?
Simple. If a flood is a natural occurrence, it is considered an act of the heavens. It is then not the government's fault, and so they don't have to compensate any of the victims. No victim relief is given. Every year is considered the worst flooding ever. In 3 generations, in 100 years, in 500 years, in 1,000 years. The numbers change, but the story is familiar. And the poor people there follow orders, unawares, without understanding. In Changshu, a city of 12 million in Hainan, one of these dam releases reached the city's subway and flooded a train, trapping 500 people in the commuter subway. They were ordered to stay put, not to leave the subway. What a broken people. even with water filling their train and the ventilation knocked out of commission. The people on the train didn't even break a window. They simply stayed with no instinct to survive, only to follow orders. They stayed, and unknown numbers drowned. They followed orders and just drowned. Outside, a cover-up took place. We never know how many died there, how many followed orders. In the same province, Hennans, there was a protest a while back. Hundreds of people stood outside a branch of the People's Bank of China. They invested all of their money there, and the bank would not let them withdraw their money. In total, over 50,000 people were affected. Many had their entire life savings there. Imagine their surprise when hundreds of men in white t-shirts ran towards them and began beating them. As they stood in protest, they were beaten viciously as police watched. Eventually, the police came and arrested the protesters. Their COVID travel passes were suddenly red. A COVID pass is needed to move anywhere in the country of zero COVID. Their cards were previously green, allowing them to travel to Xinjiang, and suddenly their cards were red, so they were not legally allowed to travel. This was the premise for their arrests. This violation was the reason they were arrested, not the fact that they were there to receive their money, not the fact that they were beaten by unknown militants, not the protests, not the violence, but zero COVID. You see where this is going? It turns out that the bank stole $6 billion. It was theirs now. In Western China, there was a province where there's a genocide going on in Xinjiang. There live a people that don't look like your typical Han Chinese. So far west, it borders Afghanistan, and the people look kind of like Afghans, like Central Asians. The Chinese Communist Party decided to make their lives a living hell. There are millions of people there in prison, in outdoor prisons, where they cannot leave, and tens of thousands are in internment camps. They call them training camps to learn new skills, vocational skills. They say they are voluntary, but do voluntary schools have armed guards? In the information age, truth has a hard time hiding. Someone found the files, the Xinjiang police files, and released them. Photos of over 20,000 prisoners were released.
And what were their crimes?
Some studied the scriptures. They had long beards. They prayed 5 times a day. A 15-year-old child used a VPN to watch social media. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison. A 74-year-old woman was imprisoned for 5 years. She studied her scriptures at home. The women are sterilized. The prisoners are often killed when their organs are removed from their live bodies. The world watches, the world knows, and yet not a sound. In Xinjiang, it is North Korea all over again. And yet China sits on the Human Rights Commission at the United Nations.
Cam Hemmans, it funds the Human Rights Commission.
Indeed, narrator. There is a 15-year-old child sentenced to 15 years in jail right now, and more than likely, she has been sterilized. She will never have children. What a thing to do to a woman. What demon would think of this? This is the empire that's on the rise. This is our future. To flood your own citizens, rob their life savings in their banks, force them to watch their grandparents starve to maintain zero COVID. There is a genocide going on in Xinjiang, China, and Xi Jinping's CCP Communist Party is responsible. To humiliate humanity in such ways is evil. This is the evil empire. If you think the old empire was bad, wait until the new world under this tyranny.